good day. This is next post I'm going to have. Like I said, I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to make this metal bending jig or tool, commonly in the trade called a brake. It's something I'm going to make on my own. I use my vise here. Basically all I'm really doing is making the jaws from 4-inch to 12-inch. I've got this piece of metal here that I'm going to weld these hinges here to this metal. This piece of metal is going to bend. I've got another piece of 12-inch metal here that's over on this side. So when I push this over, basically you're going to be able to bend a piece of metal just like, well actually, it's going to be upright like that, just bend it just like that so you get a 90-degree angle. So, right now I just did a dry run on it. Make sure it all looks good. Get some second thought, get some third thought, think of how I'm going to get this done. And then I'm going to work on this. So I went and moved the camera around, give you a close-up. A lot of people have a lot of problems seeing my ugly mug here, so I figure I'll show you what the product is because it's really what you're calling for. So I basically put a dry run together, so I'm going to take it apart so you can get a better idea of how I put it together, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do from there. Pull that off, pull that off, pull this off, and pull this off. So I have a couple pieces of angle iron here. Let's see, that's 1.5 by 1.5. So easy enough, good solid pieces of metal, hardened steel. Basically what I'm looking to do is two things. One is I'm looking to, here we go, this works better. One is to widen the jaws. As you can see from here, the jaws go to here, and yet I've got to bend right here and right here and right here and right here. So as such, I've got to set it right here, bend it a little bit, move it over, set it here, move it over again. With this piece here, I can simply set this right in here and then bend it all the way through, and it'll work perfectly. Now, with me, that would work fine, but I want something that will bend, that will hold it in instead of just hammering it and make it look a little bit rough. I want to make it as clean as possible. So what I'm going to do here is then, and I'll show it here in reverse, I want to have another piece of metal on top here that's flush here. So when we have your piece of metal here, I can just bend this around on a hinge and it will now flatten this piece out beautifully. So the piece that's in here will now go in here, and then I will bend it like this. The reason, okay? Now, on making this, let's see. Making this, I think of the thickest piece of metal that I'm going to have, and it's going to be basically 10 gauge metal, which is fairly thick metal, okay? And what I need to do is make sure that when I bend it, that I'm going to have plenty of room there, okay? Now, the hinges, And how in the heck was I going to do this? Yeah, there we go. So, since this is the metal that's going to be bent, excuse my American here. So this is the metal that's going to be bent. I want to line everything up over on this side. I hate cutting and wasting extra metal. Get all of this lined up over on this side. Let's go put clamps on, make sure that this does not get moved. Okay? So think of this as if the hinge is already open, or I'm sorry, closed, where I have now bent the metal. Now obviously this has got to be on a hinge, so I'm going to throw a hinge right there, and I'll throw a hinge right there. So I'll just kind of center it right there and right there. So think of it this way, this has now already been closed. This is going to be the end product of the piece of metal that was already bent. This is all lined up. This is all lined up. And so the next thing I need to do is weld the hinge to this piece of metal and weld the hinge to this piece of metal. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So now I've got the welder all set up. So this is a Lincoln Welder 140 HD. 140 HD, I'll give you a close-up of it. Real basic welder. Got the recommendation from my brother, who is the culprit that got me into metal work and got me out of a lot of the woodworking, although I still do it just out of sheer habit. Real basic, wire feed. I've never had to go on the wire feed past 1, that's the slowest speed. The thicker metal that I use like this is normally at the top gauge, which is E, which is the hottest. This is 110 volts, which is good enough for what I do. And I'll show you how this works. Please excuse the sparks and everything here. So I'm going to see if I can get a close-up on that weld there. Yeah, that's about it. So it does a good bead. Most of the reason for a lot of the sparks and everything is because I'm basically dealing with a lot of dirty metal. Dirty metal in this regard basically meaning I got a lot of rust on it. I've done a little bit of wire on it, but ideal situation, which I've never had in my life, is a piece of metal that is perfectly clean and I can be able to weld it and there's no sparks, no nothing. I just have not ever seen that happen. So what I'm dipping the tip into is what is called nozzle gel. It's also a product by Lincoln Electric. Basically, it keeps the spatter that we normally see here off of the nozzle, so I can do less cleaning on that and hopefully even less replacement on that. So let's finish this off, and then, in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll save you the agony of watching all those sparks, and I'll take you on to the next screen. So I've got the welding done, and then from here I'm going to just take it apart, see how well I did on that. Then I've got lots of sanding, lots of grinding on there, as you can see. And then from there I've got to cut this off proper length, and then I'm going to put a couple handles on here so that when I bend it, I can bend it smoothly. But I'll show you here a little bit better what I've got going on. Remember to wear your gloves. Just think of this as very hot. As you can see now, bends pretty good. So let's put in just a thin piece of metal. There we go. So let's just put in a thin piece of metal, and I will show you how I do it. You obviously do not do it that way. That right there. That one goes right there. Open it up a little bit. Let's put a thin piece of metal in there. Let's tighten it up. And basically it bends just like that. Why doesn't it? And that's the reason why. There we go. So it makes it at least a cleaner bend as opposed to a straight hammer. Figure out why is that not bending a little bit more, and I think because even though this is angle iron, let's see how I'm going to show you. Even though this is angle iron, as you can see in here, it gets a little thinner here versus a little thicker here. And that's the reason why it's not a perfectly clean 90-degree bend. But it does still pretty darn good for a bend like that. And that's it. So what I'll do is I'll clean this up first, and then I'll So let's take off the face mask. Take off the face mask, take off the goggles, so I'm not breathing in a bunch of dust and getting my eyes popped out. So I got this all, as you saw, wire brushed as well as ground down. So let's show you again what I've got. I've got these two right there. Stick this guy in here just as a test run again. Oh, jeez, that hurts. Tell you what, let's do a thinner piece of metal. No reason to kill my back. So this one here just basically bends down like that and does pretty darn good, or at least what I was wanting it to do. So next thing I'm going to do is to show you how I cut these down with the metal cutter, and then the next thing is I got a couple lines right here whereby I'm going to put a piece of metal, maybe either straight up, two handlebars, or maybe one piece of metal, bend it and come back down again as one, so that I could be able to handle this a little bit better, because trying to twist something this way is a whole lot harder than trying to bring it straight down. Thank you. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to trim off the pieces of metal here, so we've got nice smooth pieces. Likewise, introduce you here to this Chicago Electric power tool, basically a metal cutter. It's got a 14-inch blade on it, big enough to cut everything that I possibly could want to do. It's your really basic, simple piece. It comes down and it chops. It's got an angle piece here that I've got a trusty little wrench here to tighten and loosen and move it around the way I want to. I've got a little vise here that they have, basically, that I use to tighten up the metal. Got a quick release where I can move it back to where I want it. Right now most of the paint is in the way. There is a tiny little play in it, but that's to be expected. But it basically does everything I want it to do. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this piece off to match the other piece. I don't need all that wasted metal out there. I can use it for something else as well. So basically bring it down to where I need it. Bring this piece over. I've got it at a straight 90-degree angle. The threads are in. And then tighten it down. Simple as that. It has a safety button up here on the handle. You have to push in the safety button. Then you push the power on to start cutting. Simple as that. One thing I learned a long time ago with cutting anything really hard, started off with hardwoods, then with rock, drilling rock, cutting rock, and now with metal. Let the tool do the work. Not everything's going to cut like butter. Okay? Simple as that. So in this case here, just bring it down a little bit of weight, let it cut itself. When it's done cutting, you'll look at the sparks. The sparks are disappearing. Then you'll know that it's done fine. The cut's great. It's got a little piece of metal here, which is just the way it is. That comes off. Throw that in there. Next cut I'm going to do, let's see how I'm going to do this. Because I want everything, I like everything the same length and everything. So we'll bring this piece up. We'll bring this piece over. For those people old enough, there is a Western paperback out there, also made into a movie, I was told. The title of it was called Shane, S-H-A-N-E. There was a story in there where someone was trying to build a house, and they would measure once and start cutting and then realize that their measurements were not quite right. So there's an old proverb out there that's basically measure twice, cut once. That way you'll know everything is right. And that's what I do as much as I can. I hate doing tape measures because with tape measures, it may not always turn out the same. For whatever reason, I swear that a lot of my tape measures are just a coiled up snake that just doesn't quite get it. So that works good. So that's all tight. And then let's cut this piece. So as you can see, or if I was able to get you up close enough, it can do a pretty darn thin cut. The problem though is that with cutting, especially with these longer blades right here, you can still get some flexing in the blade. Now if I had a Sawzall, I'd have a lot of flexing. And as you can see, it did a perfect cut there going into it. It's right here, it's where it started flexing and bending. Now if I had a shorter blade, it wouldn't do it so much, but this is what I got. So I can do one of two things. I can grind this perfectly smooth, which is what I'm going to do, and then we can get that taken care of. Next thing is getting a handle put on. Thank you. So, last part of this is a handle. So, like I mentioned, I got a couple marks here I put on there, and I was thinking basically a handle goes up and around. Next thing I did was I looked through all my buckets and boxes of scrap metal, trying to think of what would be able to put up enough resistance here. Basically, if I had tubing, that tubing can bend. If I had rebar, which I don't have any thicker rebar, that would work if I had a loop on here. Got clothesline or clothes hangers, that's not going to do anything. I could have put some other metal in here, and that just didn't really work very good. And then I saw this piece of metal. So this is off of a old file cabinet. It used to be metal hangers, so you'd have your hanging files here, and you had a couple bars here. And so what I was looking at is saying, heck with it. I could put this piece right here, put this on here, and then I could grab hold of this way, and it could pull this way. It's not going, if I had it held like this, as you can see, it could bend. It's got a lot more strength on this side, so it's not going to bend as much, hopefully. And if it does, then I can beef it up, maybe put a wood handle on there, and that would beef it up. Or just scrap this and go and find some rebar somewhere and get that welded. But right now, this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to this is the way I'll do it, is I'll put the C-clamps over on this side, and then weld the bottom piece here, and take the C-clamp off, and then weld up in through here. So I've got all sorts of contacts there to make sure that that's not going to go anywhere. So this is the next project. Someone emailed me and said, where in the heck did you get all your tools from? Well, that's a story in itself. Basically, as you can see, this C-clamp is rusty as can be. Had a friend of mine, his father unfortunately had passed away, and he was trying to clean out the garage and the barn and everything else before the new owners came in, which they had sold the place. And I said, well, I'll come down and help you clean out the place. I said, well, what about, that's where I got this vise here. What about that vise? And he said, I've got 3 vices already. I don't need another vise. So took it off of its stump and brought it along. That's where this C-clamp came. I think I had a bucket of nuts and bolts, and that's where those came from as well. So, you just keep on picking up things here and there. I see scrap metal flying around. I find out who the owner is and get permission to pick it up. Most of the time they're happy for you to take it from them. Same thing with tools. Go to yard sales. You do not need to buy the best, because as you can see, it's going to get banged up and beat up. Okay? So I'm going to stop the camera now. I'll weld this up. You see what a weld job is, and then I'll stop it and show you afterwards. So this is the culmination of a little bit of work here. It probably, from all the stops and starts on what I've done, I still took probably maybe about 2 hours to do it. To do the actual work, to do the thought process took quite a bit longer, but my mind works a little bit differently. than most other people. What old professor of mine used to say was he used to think in 4D, which was X, Y, and Z, as well as in time. Well, my old professor used to think back past history and time. My first degree is in geology. So if you can think back a few million years and think of how the rocks were laid in a specific area, visualize it, look around, says, oh, okay, well the stream's coming down this way, the sand's here, beach is here, and everything else. I learned from him to do that, and then I've turned around and made it into the future. It says, okay, what do I want to make? Let me reverse engineer it. Then let me push it back forward, think into the future. If I do all of these steps, what complications, what issues there are, and work those through, so it takes me sometimes 10 times longer in the thought process than actually doing it. But then I get very few models of things that are what I do. In a worst case scenario, I've made 2 failures and then I've made 1 good thing. Okay? Case in point, this piece here, part of a wind chime that I make. As you can see, it's just a little bit too large. That's the other thing. I always think outside of the box, and so I try to make it a little bit larger. But I'm digressing right now. Let me show you how this darn thing works. So, you put a piece of metal in, you know where you want to bend it, and voila, it's bent. Simple as that. I've got 4 magnets up here to hold it on for right now. What I might even do is, if I really wanted to do it, on this vise here, as you can see, there are 4 no, it's not X. Star screws in there. I can drill a couple holes in here, take these pads off, and drill holes, and then put those pads in there, and I can put it as a permanent thing. That's when I go into production. I got to bend 20 items at once. It'd be easier to do that. Then I know everything is consistent in that regards. So in this regards here, I've got it all made, and that's how it is. Simple as that. I've got one made. I don't plan on making any more, not unless someone really wants one and they don't want to put up with the time and aggravation to do it. Just send me an email, again, burnandiron.cuttingwood@gmail.com. Tell me what you envision, tell me how you want to hook it up, and a lot of times I can even envision things over the telephone, put together a prototype, send off an email to you, how it looks, and if you like it, then I'll build it and charge you a fair price. Thank you kindly. Enjoy life.